Do you feel like the words serenity and entrepreneurship are oxymorons? Well, in today's episode, we're talking with Jonathan Aymin of Common Sense Events and the Venue RX podcast, who not only has grown a successful business, but also is the father of four, a husband, and has another baby on the way, who is going to illuminate us about how serenity is actually a key element of understanding how to build a business. On top of that, he talks about some other juicy and really inspiring and motivational tips to dive in to owning your role as a CEO and entrepreneur. All right, let's go.
Welcome to the Flourishing Entrepreneur Podcast with Alea Harris. This is the place where you and your fellow empire-building entrepreneurs come to vanquish the burnout monster and boost your glow and cash flow with energy alignment techniques and tried and true marketing strategies. Since seven figures won't get itself, hit that subscribe button and never miss out on your chance to skyrocket profits, tap into your intuition, and manifest your dreams. And now, your host, Powerhouse StoryBrand Certified Guide, award-winning marketer, bioenergetic business coach, and Japanese whiskey lover, Alea Harris.
Have you ever noticed that sometimes the most peaceful people just have this air about them of non-combativeness? They practice serenity as a tool, and it seems like instead of being the strong tree that breaks when the wind blows, they are the flexible willow that knows how to flow and bend exactly at the right angle so that they can stay standing. That is a great analogy for being an entrepreneur. And the mantra for today is I use discernment to know when to change and when to flow. I use discernment to know when to change and when to flow. Say it with me. I use discernment to know when to change and when to flow. I use discernment to know when to change and when to flow. When you are of that mind where you are constantly making decisions and making choices for your highest good, and you're staying aware of what is happening in your life right now, especially at how that relates to what will happen to your life in the future. That, my friend, is you being aware and using that discernment to know when it's you, when it's not you, what you can change, what you cannot change, and how to know the difference, which is something we get into in my interview today with Jonathan. Again, he's from Common Sense Events and the Venue RX podcast, dad of four, husband, and lover of all things buffalo flavored. I can't wait to get into this interview where he talks about how he's used some really tried and true motivational tools, some great insights from his busy life, and true authenticity moments to come to a greater understanding of what it means to be a modern entrepreneur. Let's listen in now on the interview that I have with Jonathan.
This episode is brought to you by Strategy by Flourish Marketing. Most entrepreneurs are too close to their business to clearly communicate how they add value and stand out from the competition. Sometimes they even struggle to say what they do and offer. If you're confused, then your potential clients are confused, and confusion is a profit killer. That's why Flourish Marketing uses StoryBrand as the foundation for our products and services. The StoryBrand framework helps companies understand what their customers are looking for and how to position themselves to get those customers to pay attention. If you'd like help creating clear brand messaging for your marketing collateral, head to www.flourishmarketing.co/strategy and schedule a call today. You have only confusion to lose and money to gain. Visit www.flourishmarketing.co/strategy to get started.
Hey, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us on the Flourishing Entrepreneur podcast today. How are you doing?
I am doing so well, Alea. Thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
It's gonna be a good time. I have a feeling in deep in my soul it's gonna be a good time. Before
Well, I do too. I'm pumped.
before we dive into all of the nuggets of wisdom that you have for the people, why don't you tell them who you are, what you do out in the world?
Definitely. My name's Jonathan. I run a company called Common Sense Events. It started actually as a staffing company, and we grew it up to the place that we had almost 900 employees. We were doing really great. Southern California area. We were working with a lot of venues and a lot of catering companies, and just we were learning so much about personal, management, managing people, human capital, things like that. And as we grew the company, we realized we loved the industry, but we didn't love the piece of the industry we were tackling. We weren't really able to have those great relationships with our clients. It was pretty transactional. And so we started slowly making the shift to venue management, which is what we do now. And we ended up selling the staffing component of what we do. And now we're full time venue management. We do some consulting for venues, and we currently operate venues in Southern California, and then we consult all over the country. And we also have a podcast that you have made an incredible appearance on. I just loved having you on. And so that's the Venue RX. And I'm also a dad of almost going on 5 now. And so yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That is amazing. As somebody who has 0 children, having 4 I thought was impressive. Having 5 is just, like, next level. You and your wife are actually superheroes to me. If you have any secrets you'd like to share, I am all ears. Having 4 children, though, running business, being a husband, doing all the things can be a lot. It can add up. You could be burned out, stressed, not even really knowing which way is up or down. But you, superhero that you are, have found a way to figure it out. And I want to know what the heck you've done. So please tell me and everyone listening, what techniques or tools do you use to avoid burnout and stay in alignment personally and professionally?
I love this question. I think a lot of it has to do, and it's still, it's an evolution. So I can't say I totally have figured it out and I have the holy grail for everyone, but I know what has worked for me and what continues to work for me, and it is an ongoing process. But for me, it is modifying my expectations and the story that I tell myself about my life, and it relates to also my own management of myself. You can't explain to my 2-year-old daughter, why it's an important phone call that daddy's on and why she needs to be quiet when she wants me to look at her beautiful new gymnastics outfit. She wants to tell me that. Similarly, when you have clients, the owners of these businesses who we partner with, you can't tell them that their problem is not more important than anything else in the world at that time, and they want access. And so for me, I used to really, really struggle with not feeling like I had work-life balance. It's kind of this hot, hot topic. And actually, I saw a post by Brandy Garr recently on her Instagram that was really cool and kind of addressed this issue. But for me, for for work-life balance and management, it really is saying, hey, where am I at in life right now? What are the expectations that I'm going to have in my life? I have 4 children. I know that I'm going to be asked a lot of, both from my clients and my employees and my children and my family and everyone else who's in my community. And so if I go to the table understanding that this is going to be tough, it's so much easier for me to enjoy the process rather than be fighting it the whole way. Because if I tell myself I'm here and I'm going to just coast through this, and this is going to be great and this is going to be easy, I'm not mentally prepared to handle the constant chaos and stress and things like that. So for me, definitely kind of adjusting my expectation of what life is going to look like. And then, I don't know if this is going to be too harsh. This is something that for me has really made a big difference, though, is stopped being weak. And
That's fascinating.
like I hate to say this, but there is some some toughness that is needed. And I don't think it's discussed enough. And I know that going through my entrepreneurial journey with the process that I've had growing with my wife, we've been almost, married almost 10 years now, the kids that we have, the relationships that we built in our community, I have needed to ask for more of myself than I was able to give. And there's this message that I think that we're told that like, you're enough. And in a sense you are, you are who you need right there in that moment to make that change. But in a sense, you also aren't. In the sense, you're that caterpillar that needs to, open up and expand into that butterfly. And a lot of times that's through, a painful process. That's through falling on your face. That's through, being humble and sticking with it. And it's not necessarily, self-care or not necessarily some of these things that are really, really talked about a lot, which I think are important. I'm not, don't get me wrong. I'm not discounting self-care, but I am saying in the moment that you're in the fire, sometimes you got to stay in the fire. Sometimes you got to stay with the pressure because on the flip side of the pressure, you're going to get this result that you're looking for. And for me, that was really, really just so important because I started this business really lazy, I got to say. I started it with a wrong expectation. I thought I was going to be a millionaire really quick. I thought my relationship was going to be easy. I thought I was going to be a whiz at parenting. Like I had this ridiculous confidence, I think maybe. And, as I went through struggles and things, I think submitting to the pressure, submitting to the fire, letting it shape and mold me was something that has really, really been important and shaped how I feel today and how I'm able to just get things, receive challenges and not let them fluster me in kind of that emotional level that we're talking about.
I received that. That was, if we were in church, I'd be like, you were saying a word on today, Jonathan, because I do think that there's a lot of times when you're in that fire and you just feel incredibly uncomfortable and you're just, that you have to push through, but you have to weigh, do I want to feel uncomfortable or do I want to move through this? Right. So I also want to touch on something that you mentioned earlier in your word from the pulpit was about your daughter being super excited to show you her gymnastic outfit, which I bet is freaking adorable. Your kids are adorable. I have seen them on video. And also your client saying, well, but my problem is the most important. And your daughter is too. She's not understanding what that means. So what do you do in that situation? Because a lot of times you see people like rushing their kids off the room. And when I've been on a call with you, you do the exact opposite. And I think it's adorable. But how does that work? How do you manage that lifestyle?
A lot of sprints to the garage, stiff arms, and I do a lot of Heisman, no.
Back, child, back.
Back. Mute. I know somebody is going to relate to that. I can't say that I'm always consistent with this, but one thing that has worked very, very well for me is having those conversations with my kids to explain to them what I'm doing. And so in those moments that I'm not able to be available to them, I explain to them why it's valuable, what I'm working on, and I try to include them in the process as much as possible. Something from my childhood that really has informed this is my dad worked defense contracting and always was working on these, secret programs and really wasn't able to talk to us about what he did ever. In fact, there were large periods of time where he would just disappear and he wouldn't really even be able to tell my mom what was going on. And for me, it was cool, but in a sense, it was like I knew he had a job and the money just kind of showed up. And my parents had this, they would always say, okay, we can't spend a lot of money on this or that or the other thing. But I also saw that they would spend money on kind of the things that they wanted to spend money on. So as a kid, you start developing this weird idea about how money and value is created. And in my mind, things just kind of happened. A rude awakening. And of course, anyone who's listening to this podcast knows money just doesn't magically appear. I turned 16, 17, 18, getting jobs. And I'm like, damn, toilet paper costs money, and So from me now informing the decision with my own children, I really try to say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is a wedding venue. These are people who are getting married. Like, I explain to them, and I say, the people that I'm on the phone with were daddy's coworkers or, daddy's clients. We got to talk to them. And a lot of times I'll bring my kids, at a certain point, the clients will meet my kids. And so I try to, again, going back to what I said originally, accepting it and going with the flow instead of trying to fight it. Sure, you can have boundaries. Sure, you can say, only call me between this time and this time and this time. And like, great. But I think in a sense that's been overplayed because those boundaries constantly get violated. And then either you feel bad or there's incredible friction. And I just find it so much better to be clear in my communication with the client. They might be calling me at home, especially in the world we live in now. Don't apologize for it. Don't try to hide it. Say, hey, oh, I'm so sorry. My daughter's really excited about her gymnastics outfit. In fact, hey, can I call you back? And sometimes just acknowledging the fact that you're going to do this, they know that they're not dialing into like a 1-800 building and I'm here with my, suit and, they know that. And I haven't fronted on that from the beginning. So I think being authentic and also bringing my kids and my family along for the ride really, really makes a big difference in this aspect.
Yes, and I've seen you do it incredibly well, just kind of weaving in through it, and it comes with such an authenticity, like you were saying, that it feels natural, as opposed to when people apologize for their children, when I'm on a call with them, I kind of cringe because 'cause I'm like, "Well, they're humans and they're just little." And they just I mean, you don't really wanna be on this Zoom either if you're super honest, so like, let's treat life like it really is and not what we imagine it's supposed to be quote unquote "professional" about
Yeah.
everything. In today's day and age, professional has a very different meaning than what I think it used to, right? I'm a marketing agency, right? But I'm not Don Draper. I'm not going into the office, leaving my cares behind and drinking whiskey. Like that's not what life is like. So as you are building this empire of yours of venues, including your beautiful family, 4 and 1 more on the way, what are 3 pro tips from your area of expertise that you will use to help our empire builders scale their businesses while enjoying their entrepreneurial journey?
That's a great question. And I think in terms of tips, we've already gently touched on one, but really having a grasp on yourself. And again, I'm going to go to a place that's not necessarily super popular, but if we go back to the basics, and I want to start with this for a very specific reason, but if we go back to the basics, we look at what we are putting in our minds, in our bodies, if we look at what we're ingesting into us, that's going to be the cup that we can pour from. And so for me, something that has been really important, and if you asked, you know, 25, 28-year-old me, that's a couple years ago. I'm 32 now. But if you asked me the same question then, I would have never said this. But I've seen an incredible difference in my life from going back to the basics and saying, okay, what am I pouring in, whether it's through social media, whether it's like, what am I looking at? And is that encouraging me towards the things that I'm actually wanting, or is that a part of a fantasy and part of escapism that I'm trying to like just get a little bit of that vacation or get a little bit of that thing because that's what I want? So for me, I mean, a practical tip that I can give anyone out there who's juggling doing multiple things, it would be be intentional about looking at what is in your environment. Is the TV on in the background? What accounts are you following on social media? Like, do a very basic audit and look, like, I love old fashions. I'm a big old fashioned guy. But I know that if I am drinking too many old fashions, I'm going to be really fuzzy. And, it's not even the hangover. It's not that. And, I think, some people would actually have a problem with that and they need to respect that, but some people won't. And understanding, though, the impact that has on you, is it building toward your future, or is it just kind of this reprieve. And once you start finding yourself latching onto these little pieces of escapism, whether it's a vacation, whether it's food, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whatever. And I'm not even saying drugs are bad. Like, weed is legal in a lot of different places. And like, I'm not saying that it's bad, but it's like, audit yourself. Is doing this helping you escape from the life that you live? Or is it building into creating the life that you actually want to have? And so that right out the gate, point number one, audit what's going on. People talk about auditing your circle of friends. Like, before you even do that, look at what you're doing. Look at how you're showing up in your life and focus on that. Second thing, and I'm hoping I'm not too long-winded here, but the second thing that's really made a difference for me is actually spend some time thinking about what I'm headed towards, and constantly be focused on that and the realignment that oftentimes that gives me. But I'll tell you one thing, you've got to write it down, and you probably got to write it down more times than one. And I'm a perfect case of someone who didn't write them down, and then things happen, you get phone calls, you get people who want to realign your schedule and your life. You even get kids, spouse, whoever, who are giving you these inputs. And if you don't have some sort of reminder in your space, whether it's on your phone on notes or a picture or a screensaver or a wallpaper or a background of kind of what you're going towards, and not just a picture of a big fancy house because you want to be a millionaire someday. I'm talking about kind of specific things that are key points. I'm not even going to say a vision board, because it's more than that. It is phrases, it is sentences, it is a written out kind of plan. And this can change, right? But you've got to have something in your ecosystem that tells you where your North Star is. And when you're able to do that, you can get tossed and thrown around a little bit. And it's like, oh boy, I got to recenter now. Let me go back to the drawing board. Let me go back to my notes. Okay, what did I say back there? And then you might look at it and say, man, well, this has changed. I need to redefine the vision a little bit. And maybe and so for me, it's changed a lot. In fact, I keep a running list of notes that I create for myself every single birthday. I pick on my birthday a word of the year, and I set some goals. And then I go back, and I've got it as far back as, when I was 25. So it's been about 7 years now. And I look at the priority list and the things, and one is buy a motorcycle and do some of these things. And I had a motorcycle for a while, but I look back on those goals or those things that I wanted now, and I'm like, damn, where was my head at? What was I focused on? So it's okay to do that. And I love seeing the progression, because then there's personal growth. But actually writing things down in your ecosystem will definitely help you juggle multiple things and not just constantly get tossed around. And then the final thing I would say is surround yourself with people. Do strategic things that allow you to be around people who are building into your future and who aren't pulling you back from it. And this includes, employees. This includes your bosses or the people that you work for if you are not an entrepreneur or not a CEO. This is family members. That's a touchy subject right there, but we can get into that because I've got plenty of experiences that I can lean on for how I've had to kind of massage those relationships to help me get here where I am now. So I said employees, friends. I think friends are so important, and we talk about the value of relationships, but I at one point was so concerned about not having friends or not having people in my ecosystem who were on the same page as me. And I was looking for the camaraderie, and I was looking for the human relationships, because I'm a very, relationally driven person. I'm more extroverted than I am introverted. I thrive off of that human connection. And so I would sacrifice the value of the relationship just for the relationship oftentimes. And those, even though it didn't feel like they were actively trying to dissuade me from my path, there were little things, there was little bits of friction here and there that just kind of kept pulling me away from being focused on, again, those things that I had written down that I said that I wanted. And so that fuels this kind of escapism mentality, because you've got people in your system saying, hey, come on, why can't you come out with us? Or, hey, why don't you just stay a little longer afterwards and grab a drink? Or, oh, hey, we're all doing this other fun thing. And my mind's going, relationships. Yes, that's awesome. I want to be a part of that community, right? But then I've written down for myself that I want to run a big company and I want to impact a lot of people and I want to have a good family, or I don't want to have a fucked up family. How about that? Pardon my French, right? And so so we got this over here and we got this over here. Like, what am I doing? So having those people, and I got to a place where I just fired all my friends. And I kind of went to this more lonely place, and I wouldn't recommend that either. For anyone who's listening right now, I don't recommend you just cut off everyone in your life and go for this draconian, model of your life, because it's not sustainable. For me, I had to build back in relationships that actually were valuable, not just cut all of the bad relationships out. So it's definitely a replacing. And if you can't do it with real people in your life, do it with the YouTube channels, do it with the Instagram accounts, like have those virtual relationships very clearly encouraging your future, not your present or your past.
I had to take a moment after that. I'm sitting here writing notes furiously, thinking about what friends are on the chopping block. My goodness, Jonathan. If the whole venue thing doesn't want to work out for you, which I'm sure it will, because you're doing great, and you wanted to like go on tour as a motivational speaker, I will be in the front row. I'm like, oh, I'm fired up just listening to you. You're incredibly inspiring with the way that you think about life and business and your approach. So I really appreciate that.
Alea, you asked for some tactical information, I realized, in my specific category, not motivational stuff. And I couldn't help but go there. I'm so sorry.
That means that is literally your no, don't give me nothing else. No, we're gonna leave that. We're gonna
because I have three. All right.
I think that the people got more than enough, Jonathan. It is, you gotta be led by where you're going here. And I think that you did give tactical and practical advice, because that's kind of what this whole podcast and what I'm all about is people say, oh no, but he didn't tell me about, creating a banquet order. Like, that's tactical and practical. It's like, well, as an entrepreneur, all of it is related. So you cannot divorce the things that you were talking about, like managing your circle, spending your time thinking about, what do you want to be in alignment with your North Star, understanding how escapism might actually be allowing you to escape from your dreams. All of those things are incredibly important when you're an entrepreneur. And I will take that. We'll take that. We're going to put a bow around it and move on.
I love it.
So then that brings me to my next question for you, which is, how do you celebrate, protect, and manage your energy, especially during times of growth?
That is challenging because it's definitely morphed. And I think the season of your life that you're in personally will inform this. So, you may, if you have young kids, it's going to be different than if you don't have young kids, and if you're an empty nester, or you are, not married yet, or if you are married but have no kids, or like whatever phase in life you are, I think it's going to inform how you do this. For me, I have learned to have the rest, have the break, have the rejuvenation, have the kind of the energy and the wind put back into my sails through things that don't necessarily slow me down. So again, I'm kind of like coming back to this again, but I really think it's important. Don't recreate or don't, take the time for self-care in a way that slows you down. Find a way to latch onto things that push you forward, but are still fun. So I can give you some very practical examples here. Instead of, like, I told you the relational, I told you the relational part here. And like, I'm a highly relational community type guy. For me, it used to be like, okay, I'm going to go and I want to get drinks with all my friends. We're going to laugh. We're going to have a good time. It's going to be hilarious. It's going to be awesome. We're going to play pool. We're going to, whatever we did, right? I had to switch that around and realize I can't just suck out the relationships out of it, the fun out of it, and just tell myself I'm going to, get refreshed by going on a run, like that's important. And that can definitely help for people getting a good workout in and things like that. But I had to do a kind of a swap, kind of like that Indiana Jones, move where he's trying to, swap out the gem or whatever happens in the movie. I had to do a swap there, and I had to say, okay, how am I going to get that relational output? And for me, that was a podcast, right? For me, that was connecting to a community of people who I could invest in and I could relate to and I could participate in, that gave me that relational outlet and also helped me connect with amazing people like you, Alea, and helped me start moving my life forward in a way that I am checking that relational box for myself. I am getting inspired and fueled up and fired up, and I am managing my energy, and I am doing that as like a break when things get me down. But now I'm all of a sudden generating a relationship opportunity with you. I'm generating a value creation opportunity for my client. So now there's this compounding effect, because I'm not just taking a break and pausing. I'm actually still moving forward, albeit maybe slower because I'm not working, but at the same time, I'm still doing something that fuels me going forward. And I think you can use this in pretty much any area of life. If you're wanting to get somewhere, don't take a break with something that pauses you. Take a break with something that just maybe is a little bit slower, but still in the same gear and going down the same path, basically.
That is fascinating. I never really thought about it like that, and you're right. I mean, a podcast, I'm a relationally driven person as well, so a podcast is a nice moment to sit and to build those relationships. So that makes a lot of sense. I think that people will be able to relate to that, especially those who are like, "What do you mean? There's only so many mani-pedis I can have, right? Until I just feel like, what am I doing with my life?" Exactly. Unless you're me, I'm in the nail shop every 3 weeks, but that's just for maintenance. That's not for a break. This does not just
Neither
happen,
here nor
Jonathan.
I
So
love it.
there is no magic bullet to success. I think that you have given us a lot of success tips, but there is no do this one thing and you'll be a millionaire by Tuesday. But what has been the number one piece of advice that you have now that you would give to your past self, the version of you who existed about a year after starting your business?
For me personally, it's being honest with yourself. I think as visionary entrepreneurs, I think as entrepreneurs, there is a crucial element to kind of telling yourself positive lies. And what I mean by that is, like, you have to be desperately optimistic to think that something as hard as starting your own business is going to work out and you're going to be super successful. And the statistics are there to back the fact that a lot of people aren't successful. And so you have to be desperately optimistic to tell yourself, hey, not only am I going to do this, I'm going to take this leap, but I'm going to excel. I'm going to crush it. I am going to be a millionaire by next Tuesday. And I think we as entrepreneurs live off of that. It's like our caffeine, and we need to drink from that, motivation. So that's why, you listen to Tony Robbins or you listen to other people and you have coaches and people to pump you up and to fuel you and to keep you going forward. The dark side of this is sometimes the optimism that we have to keep going. Because if you're a realist all the time, you're like, damn, man, I'm not going anywhere. I haven't made any progress. I feel like I'm stuck. Like, you can get in a very dark, negative place. So it is important to have that optimism. But at the same time, you do need to be honest with yourself about the things that aren't serving you in your circle, about the stuff that you're working on in your business that is not actually pushing you in the direction that you say you want to go. And just being honest with yourself about how you're showing up in your business and how you're showing up in your family. And when you're willing to face the hard reality and the truth about what you've created or what you failed to create, you're able to make a lot better decisions a lot faster. And I know that if I would have considered this earlier on, and you said talking to myself in the past, I know that I would be able to get here and probably far past where I am now if I would have had that ability to audit myself and be more honest with myself. And I'll tell you two things that I would do very practically right now. If you're hearing this and you're like, oh man, like, maybe this is me. Maybe I'm kind of spinning my wheels and maybe I'm here. I would, again, go back to that and write down what you want out of your life. Super easy. Just take the time, pause the podcast right here. Alea, I promise I'll tell them to come back. Pause the podcast, pause the YouTube channel, the YouTube video. Don't click on the sidebar. Just pause, grab a piece of paper. Don't grab your iPad because your iPad's going to have notifications. Your phone's going to have notifications. Grab a piece of paper and just write what are the first couple things that come to mind as far as like what you want out of life. And then in that moment, and maybe even one out of your business, pick something specific. And then once you've done that, think about what you've done in the past 2 or 3 days that builds into that. And it can be a short window, right? 48 hours. And if you haven't been doing things in the last 48 hours that are constantly and actively building into that vision, you need to either audit your vision, right? Maybe you need to adjust it. Your vision doesn't have to be $1 million. Your vision, you can correct it a little bit. If you're not doing things, you can either lower the goal or you can increase your output. And so that moment of clarity that I know that you'll find after writing it down, seeing it kind of objectively, and then looking and auditing your last 48, you could even do a little bit longer than that, but really like tighten that window and see what am I doing as a part of my daily life that's building into that goal. And you'll face a real kind of come to Jesus moment, if you will, of like, okay, I'm not building into this. Do I really want this? Or shoot, I know I really want this. I need to do something different practically. That is guaranteed. The honesty and just kind of that self-audit for me would be how I would help my younger self get to where I am and beyond quicker.
That is really key. And hope, you need to have hope as an entrepreneur, but hope is not a strategy. So, how are you going to keep that hope, keep encouraging yourself, celebrate your wins, celebrate your victories, surround yourself with positive people, and at the same time, don't allow yourself to be complacent with the little things that you're doing. You're like, oh, that's great. Now I'm gonna reward myself. I've worked for an hour. I'm gonna reward myself by taking off 3 days. Like, that's not how
Yeah.
that's gonna work. You're not going to be able to get to your goal. So you are accountable as the entrepreneur for your end goal. There's no one else sitting here telling you what to do. I had
Stop at
someone,
the end, right? Not in the middle, right? Stop. Isn't that a Kobe quote? Or maybe it was even someone else.
maybe.
Yeah.
I know the quote, but I don't know who said it. Sounds like Kobe would say it.
Sounds like Kobe would say it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to somebody and she goes, oh yeah, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to do social media management. I'm like, cool, cool, cool. I mentor lots of women and I'm like, yeah, I'll help you out. Help you out. And she goes, oh, but my biggest thing is I just need like someone to give me direction. And I was like, full stop, don't become an entrepreneur. If you need someone to give you direction and to motivate you to get up and do your job, you need to go get a job.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no one's telling me to get out of bed. If I just stay in bed and do nothing, I don't make no money. Right? And there's no boss that's going to call me and be like, make sure you're here at 9 a.m. No one is going to. And so if you are not self-motivating and finding something to be so in love with about your business that you can't imagine doing anything else, you probably should just have a job. And there's nothing wrong with having a job. As an entrepreneur, I've thought about just going to get a job. Shit is rough out here in these streets, right? So you just have to understand who you are and what makes the most sense for you. You can still have multiple streams of income and have a job, right?
Yeah.
You can take your savings, invest in real estate, do day trading, whatever it is that you want to do without being an entrepreneur. You really, really can.
Yeah.
So find the path that works for you. And I love what you're saying, being honest with yourself about what that really means. I love that.
One thing I do want to add to that, because I think that maybe there's someone out there listening who's like, damn, I really identify as an entrepreneur and I feel like I really want to be an entrepreneur and I want to go down, but like sometimes I do lack the motivation. And I got to tell you, I've been there before. Like I know and you even mentioned it, right? Like as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, you're supposed to just be this like, formidable driving force at all times and just wake up and eat problems for breakfast and just shoulder on through. But there is a layer of sometimes not wanting to wake up in the morning or not wanting to do these things, knowing that you have to, and just making that decision to carry on when you're not necessarily in a great headspace, when you're not necessarily feeling like it, when the cards aren't going in your favor, but you just make the decision to go one step further. If you can't run, crawl, walk, if you can't walk, crawl, that whole thing, right? And once you do that, you'll develop a habit of moving through these seasons in life. Because for us both as entrepreneurs, I know, because I've been in this game for a minute, like, you will have down days. You will have days you don't feel like doing it. Rough clients, rough calls, you're struggling with something relationally or something in your personal sphere that's impacting your work. Like, there's no perfect way to do this. And so keep putting that foot in front of the other, and don't judge yourself in the moment. Like, I had a tough day, I need to quit. Like, if you've had a tough, 3 years, maybe you could audit what you're doing, but you need to realize, it takes a long time to build greatness. And if what you're working on is really worth it, sometimes it takes a little while, even of banging your head against the wall. So don't get discouraged. Stay in the game. Reach out to Alea. Ask her about her process. Ask me about my process. Talk to other entrepreneurs who are going to be real with you and not tell you, hey, it's just because of your marketing, you'll make $1 million next week. I know I touched on a sensitive subject there, Alea, with
If
the
any
marketing.
marketer says you're going to make $1 million next week, run. That is not how marketing works.
Yep.
No, I love
Yep.
everything that you're saying, Jonathan. And now you have taken us to my favorite part of the episode, although this episode has been pretty awesome up until this point. But my favorite part of every episode is the journal prompt question. It's the question that is tailored, handpicked for the guest. And you listener out there, it's the question that you can use as you go back in your own journaling time to give some moments of self-reflection upon what we've talked about here and maybe how you can use that information to move yourself forward. So, Jonathan, are you ready for your journal prompt question?
I am. I think with your voice intonation, I almost feel like we need a drum roll. That amped me up. Let's go. Let's do it.
I have to get my podcast producer on that.
Exactly. Jinx.
Your journal prompt question is, what are your thoughts about the Serenity prayer? Which is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
I love this. I think the prayer is spot on. I think we've been kind of, dancing around this throughout the entire podcast as far as kind of a theme goes. When you look at things that are in your sphere, you don't always have to deal with them, right? If it's a relationship, you can, cut the cord and move on. If it's a business, if it's a client, you can fire them. If there are some of these things that do need to be done that are tough decisions and then turning points, right? But for those things that we've committed to and we've decided that we want to make work, sometimes you've got to stick with them, right? Sometimes you got to have the patience and the work ethic. And like we were just talking about with the entrepreneurship, putting one foot in front of the other and just carrying on. And, I can't help but think about my relationship with my wife when thinking about this, because we run the business together. And, so there's these these different things that we work on, not only professionally, but also relationally at the same time. And when she and I are going back and forth, sometimes those things naturally spill over into our personal relationship. If I have an opinion that goes against something that she wants, inevitably, she's going to feel some type of way about that. And I'm going to hear about that maybe even a day or two later. My wife has a fantastic memory. And she's like a steel trap. She remembers it and she's like, I really didn't like that when you said that a week ago. And I'm like, damn, okay, I got to apologize, or I got to figure out how I'm going to do this. What are we doing? But it's in those moments that you decide, okay, am I screw it, I'm done. And it's not just with my wife, it's in your business, listener out there. if you have a business, if you have a relationship, if you have a scenario you're working for somebody, a boss even, that's so hard to work with. But again, that job is molding you and shaping you into preparing you for a career opportunity and a entrepreneurship opportunity, and you know why you're in that moment. Students, if you're a student listening to this right now and you're going through that, and your professor is just a pompous, person, right? But you know that you need that degree, or you need that class, or you need whatever it is, you're going to make the decision. You're going to have the patience. You're going to have, whatever it takes to get through that. So there is some discernment, right, that goes into understanding like what hard decisions need to be made, what relationships need to be severed, what things are just tough that are actually going to serve you in your future, and then things that you can't change. The last part of this really resonates with me because you can't change other people. And the moment that you decide to take full personal responsibility for everything, the good and the bad, that happens in your life, the quicker that you will feel emotionally free. And that freedom will inform the rest of your life and will allow you to create a life that you're happy with, right? And the moment that you decide, okay, I can't change how that person's going to react to me saying this, whether it's firing an employee. I mean, there's so many applications to this. It's crazy. And it's easy to like give checklists and give, some actionable items. But when you talk about principles, you can apply the principle, whether it's hiring or firing an employee, talking about an educational opportunity, an entrepreneurship opportunity, whatever it is, even podcasting, right? Like, if I know that I need to be responsible for my own reactions and actions, and I know that I'm not going to be able to change other people, then you end up not living a life where you're constantly tossed around by either fear of what other people are going to think of you or say about you or whatever, but then also just having a comfortability with your own mindset and your own process that isn't reliant and dependent on people that you have and things that you have no control over. That's the first step to taking control of your life, to taking control of your business. I can't control how my kids are going to wake up in the morning, and I'm going to have 5 of them here in a little bit. And I can't control about, how my wife or how my clients are going to feel. And we as entrepreneurs in the wedding and event industry are constantly dealing with this cornucopia of personalities and everything that's going on in our world. And so the second that we can just get centered, we can take personal responsibility and full responsibility for what we allow or disallow in our environment. The moment that we're able to feel good about our process. And that's really what's important. Like, you never get to the destination. You die, right? So you got to love the moment. You got to love the process. And for me, loving the process really means owning the day, owning the week, owning the outcome of it, making the changes when I need to, and then being willing to be molded by the experience if it's an experience that's going to inform my future.
Wow, Jonathan, that was a impeccably well answered journal prompt question. I'm sure everyone that's out there, if they weren't inspired before, they are inspired now. And I really appreciate your response, not only to that question, but your responses to all of the questions. I think that you've helped a lot of people here today. If people want to follow up with you, to learn more about you, to get some more inspiration, just feel better about themselves in general, where can they find you?
It's funny. I probably should put out more of this stuff that's swimming around in my head constantly on my Instagram instead of just cute pictures of my children in their outfits. But I do some motivational stuff there as well. You can connect with me on Instagram at Jono Aymin. In the case that Instagram filters you into the message requests, it may take me a little bit longer to get back to you, but I do check those. So definitely slide in the DMs. And then you can also check out what we do on the podcast. I'm pretty active and present on there, The Venue RX on Instagram as well. So those 2 places are fantastic places to get a hold of me. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook, although I'm not as active on Messenger, but either LinkedIn or Instagram is a great place to get a hold of me.
Wonderful. Well, I encourage everyone to reach out if they want some more of Jonathan's lovely brain gems and heartwarming advice. And until next time, I'm so glad that you were here with us, Jonathan. Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely, Leah. Thank you for having me on. It's really a pleasure, and it was such an honor to interview you. And you dropped so many nuggets of wisdom when you came on the podcast. So I really appreciate being able to speak with your audience here. And thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure.
This episode is brought to you by Own It, the energy-centered monthly membership program you need to build your thriving six-figure empire in 12 months without feeling burned out, overwhelmed, or lost. After having reached 6 figures in 5 months, Alea created Own It because she discovered the only way to leave a legacy of abundance is to own your business instead of it owning you. Ditch the guesswork and hustle mentality that lead to daunting 18-hour days, missed family dinners, and stress-induced rashes. In Own It, you will join a supportive community of your fellow empire builders to take a holistic, step-by-step approach to craft a flourishing business and life via proven marketing frameworks, money-making business strategy, and centering alignment techniques. To join, head over to www.flourishmarketing.co/own-it. Your life has a greater purpose beyond the struggle. Join Own It today at www.flourishmarketing.co/own-it.
I don't know about you, but there were several times during that interview where I just wanted to say, preach on, Jonathan. He was saying some things that got me riled up in a good way in my spirit and made me feel motivated to keep going. I loved how real he kept everything and also how we can use the advice he gave to just be better humans and entrepreneurs. One of my favorite quotes that he gave was, stop being weak. Sometimes you have to just stay in the fire. Also, he talked about having a good grasp on yourself. What are you putting into yourself? Because that makes up the cup that you can pour from. He talked about being intentional about your environment, spending time thinking about where you're headed and aligning yourself with your North Star. By the way, if you're looking to recalibrate yourself, make sure you head over to www.flourishmarketing.co/recalibrate. We have a great recalibration guide that might help if you are a little unclear of what your North Star is and how you need to get back on track. He talked about surrounding yourself with people who strategically build you up and build your future up. And above all, being honest with yourself, not letting yourself be able to slip into that lie of positivity that we sometimes can get ourselves into. Whew, a lot of great advice here on this episode. Be sure to follow Jonathan. Make sure that you follow up with us here as well. Next week, we drop a new episode here every Wednesday on the Flourishing Entrepreneur podcast. Until next time, my name is Alea Harris, your wonderfully blessed host, because I get to talk to you here every single week. I wish you lots of love, light, and abundance. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Flourishing Entrepreneur Podcast with Alea Harris. Dive into the show notes at www.flourishmarketing.co/podcast and connect with Alea at Flourishing Entrepreneur on Instagram. Vibing with what you hear? Leave a 5-star review to spread the love and be sure to click subscribe. From the entire Flourish Marketing team, we wish you love, light, and abundance. See you next time.